Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
This is the third most important topic of this chapter is about Francois Bernier. Three travelers and their accounts. The chapter is basically based on that on these three travelers. Francois Bernier, he was a doctor with a difference. So what it says about the Francois Bernier, he was a Frenchman. He came from France, was a physician, political philosopher and historian. So this is only depicted over here, a doctor with a difference. Why he was different? He was not only a physician, he was a political philosopher as well as a very good historian. He came to the Mughal Empire in search of opportunities. He was in India for 12 years, from 1656 to 1668. He was a physician to Prince Dara Sukho, eldest son of Shah Jahan. Dara Sukho was the eldest son of Shah Jahan. So it's very clear about that. His visit to India was during the period of Shah Jahan. He dedicated his works to Louis XIV, the King of France. This Louis XIV was from the Bourbon family, and he has visited from France to India during this period of Louis XIV. This is the name of the book of the Bernier, his travel in the Mughal Empire. This book, marked by detailed observations, critical insights, and the reflection, trying to place the history of the Mughals within a universal framework. So this was the main focus of Francois Bernier in his book. While he has visited to our country, the Mughal Empire compared Mughal India to that of Europe. Now, on the comparison basis, he has depicted the lifestyle of the India and how it was different from the European society. Representation of India based on the model of binary opposition. Then India presented as the universe of Europe. India appeared to be inferior to the Western world. So this is about that the Francois Bernier, how he has explained about in the context of India as India is inferior in comparison to the Western world, in comparison to the Western country. Bernier's description on land ownership in Mughal India. During the Mughal period, when Francois Bernier he visited India, we were under the rule of Shah Jahan. India was under the rule of Shah Jahan. So what were the differences he found after the comparison of the Indian society to the Western society, and he has explained about all such things. Now he has described about the land ownership in Mughal India. What were the fundamental difference between Mughal India and Europe? This is lack of private property in land in Mughal India. When we talk about or discuss about that the land property, private ownership was not there, which was there in the Western countries. He was a firm believer of virtues of private property. Because of that, he believed in that the private property should be there. So on that ground, he found the Indian as inferior. Crown ownership of land, harmful for both the state and its people. In his view, what he found, according to him, his description, he has explained about that the crown ownership, the land ownership in the hands of the king or the ruler, that is harmful for both. Not only it is harmful for the people, but as well as it is harmful for the government also. Mughal Empire, the emperor owned all the land and distributed it among his nobles and the nobles to the peasants. This was the system. What is that? Mughal Empire, the emperor owned all the ownership of the land was in the hands of the emperor, the king, and after that, what it is done, this land is distributed among his nobles, who they were supposed to take care of the land and to collect the revenue. And what the nobles they were doing? Now, after getting the ownership of the land from the king, when they become the nobles, they distribute the land among the peasants for the cultivation of crops. Due to crown ownership of land, landholders could not pass on their land to their children. Because of that, ownership was not given. These peasants, they were cultivating the land, but under the this land ownership provision of the crown, they were only that the cultivator. They were not getting the ownership. Even that nobles also, they were not having ownership. Ownership was only to the king, to the emperor. So this cannot be inherited by their children as well. This was explained by Francis Bernier. So they were averse to any long-term investment in the sustenance and expansion of production. So this is the drawback which was highlighted by Bernier. As inheritance was not there, the land property is not been inherited by the peasants' children. So what is the adverse effect? Adverse effect was that the long-term investment was not done by any of the peasants. So that obstructs the expansion of the production. According to Bernier, what were the evil effects of the crown ownership of land? He has explained very nicely. Absence of ownership of land, landholders could not pass on their land to their children. This was the first point explained by him. What is the first drawback? Second, it comes about that they did not take any interest in increasing production. So the peasants, they are losing their interest as they have not been given the ownership of the land. So they are not taking interest in the increase in the production. Third point is given. He explained as it prevented the emergence of the improving landlords. This is about that. What is that? It prevents, it obstructs the emergence of the improving landlords. Landlords system cannot be improved. It led to the ruination of agriculture. Ruin is the root word. From there only the ruination of agriculture is originated. It brought a continuous decline in the living standard of all sections of society. As the improvement is not there, production is not increasing, and agriculture was the main source of economy in those days. So overall, the standard of living of the people in India, of all the sections, were not improving, it was declining. It led to the excessive oppression of the peasantry. As the peasants, they were not taking interest in this. So this means the excessive oppression by the nobles. This is now about according to Bernier, this was the structure of the Indian society. Rich ruling class, poor lower class, no middle class. So this is all about that. The society was only divided into the two segments. One is the rich, who they were the ruling class, like after the emperor, they were the nobles, and the peasant, rest of the section of the people, they were considered as, or they were as a poor. Because their income was fixed, they did not take interest in any of the increase in income and increase in production. There were no concept of the middle class. This is about that, his description on land ownership in Mughal India. None of the Mughal official documents state that the king was the sole owner of the land. Now, this is the fact it is given about that. Mughal official documents, whenever he tried to turn the pages of the official documents of the Mughal period, he did not find any such comment or any such section over there which is given the sole ownership of land to the king or to the crown. Abul Fazl, one of the famous court poet or the writer, has stated that land revenue demand was imposed not as rent but as payment for the protection the king provided to his subjects as a remunerations of sovereignty. So this is about that. In Aine Akbari, Abul Fazl has explained about that during the period of Akbar. So what is the purpose and the demand of the land revenue which was imposed by the king or by the crown to the people? Not as a rent, as they are the cultivating the land, but what is the main purpose behind it? Why then this revenue has been paid by the peasants? For the protection the king provided to his subjects. The king gives the protection to the entire territory which is ruled by the emperor, whosoever, whether it is Akbar or Jahangir or Shah Jahan or any other. So how to maintain this code? So as a remunerations of sovereignty means that they can live peacefully, comfortably under this ruler. So for that, as a sovereignty, it has been paid to the king, it has been paid to the crown. Then Bernier described Mughal Empire as king has been described as king of beggars and barbarians. Fields, ownership overspread with bushes and full of pestilential marshes. Because of that, land ownership was not given to the peasants, so they are not taking interest in the improvement in the development. So this is all about that. He explained about the condition of king in the eastern part of the world, and he has considered India as he visited over here. So he has explained, first explanation is given about the king of beggars and the barbarians, means that barbarians means nomadic people, no stable life, no development. Then overspread with bushes means the land is not cleared and not utilized properly and full of pestilential marshes. Then he explained about the cities, ruined and contaminated with ill air. So this is his expression about that, the Indian society, and on the comparison of the Western India, Western world, he has just given that the low status to the Indian society. Bernier's description influenced Western theorists from the 18th century. This is Montesquieu and Karl Marx. These were the two social philosophers. The very important philosopher Montesquieu and the Karl Marx. Bernier's descriptions of land ownership. This is the Asiatic mode of production and the Oriental despotism. This is Karl Marx. He has given the theory of the socialism. And Marx that about Montesquieu about that how to rule the, how to form the government, how to rule over the people. In the 18th century, these were the philosophers, and they have given spread the idea about that, the system of the governance, the evolution of that, the privileges by birth, and all such things, which many of their reforms, many of their suggestive advices are still practiced in the many parts of the world. Now coming to discuss about that, what is actually the Oriental despotism? So this French philosopher Montesquieu used Bernier's account and developed the idea of Oriental despotism. In Asia, the Orient or the East. Is it clear about that? Oriental means here what it is, that the East, eastern part of the world. How the despotism means that the king's rule is been practiced. The king enjoyed absolute authority over his subjects and owned all lands. which is considered very means that the not in a good for the development of the society by Bernier. So according to him, Oriental despotism means the eastern side, how this the rulers, the kings, they are owning the entire land property with their the absolute authority. There was no concept of private property. All people except king and nobles, they struggle for survival. Because of that, this private property, the private owner land ownership was not there. So the peasants, they are not taking interest in the development of the agriculture productivity. Then it comes Asiatic mode of production, which is the suggestion given by Karl Marx. Karl Marx further developed the idea of Oriental despotism as Asiatic mode of production. Before colonialism, surplus production was appropriated by the state. Before the colonialism, when we were in the Mughal India, at the time colonialism was not there. So that way, during those days, the surplus production, which was appropriated by the state only, by the government only, of that the particular country, wherever the ruler is ruling, they are not taking away these wealth or this revenue, this amount to their own country. This led to the emergence of a society that was composed of a large number of autonomous and egalitarian village communities. Means that the social and the economic equality. This is the meaning of egalitarian. Economic equality. So this says about that the emergence of the society that was composed of a large number of autonomous and the egalitarian village communities. The imperial code respected these villages as long as the flows of surplus was continued. Why they have been respected? Because that of the continuous flow of the surplus food production or the food grains. Marx regarded this as a stagnant system. So this was the concept, this was the belief of the Marx, and he has thrown the light about this, the societal structure. What was the more complex social reality which Bernier noticed in the Mughal Empire? Which is the noticed by Bernier during the Mughal Empire? What were the more complex thing? Artisans had no incentive to improve the quality of their manufactures. This is the first defect what he has found is it was very complex that what he was telling that incentives were not given. Profits were appropriate by the state. Production was on the verge of decline. Because of that, they are not getting any that the extra income from for their production. So they are not taking interest how to increase the production. Then vast quantities of the world's precious metals like gold and silver flowed into India in exporting manufactures. Not utilized by the Indians, but for the export. Vast quantity of gold and silver comes from the outside of the country to purchase the Indian made goods. So this is all about that. The vast quantities of the world's precious metal, which is gold and silver. Mughal cities, the 15% of the population lived in towns. This is the population ratio which has been defined by Bernier. Only 15% of the people they are living in the towns. Bernier described Mughal cities as camp towns. What he is telling about that? It's a camp town. All kinds of towns. Manufacturing towns, trading towns, port towns, sacred centers, pilgrimage towns, etc. Why it is explained as the camp towns? Because of that, all kinds of towns and the area actually, the specified areas are developed. So he has given this idea about the camp towns, described as a camp towns. One is manufacturing towns, means that the entire production work is done in that particular area, the area which is specified for the manufacturing. Trading towns, then port towns are there, which they are basically in those days it was on the coastal areas. So that way the sacred centers were also there, pilgrimage towns were also there. So it has been described as in a form of a camp towns. Their existence indicates the prosperity of merchant communities. And how these towns they are existing? With the prosperity of the merchant communities. Merchants, strong community organized into caste come occupational groups. Now this is the group which has been actually formed by the merchants, with one strong community which has organized into caste. Either they were from the merchant community or from one particular caste, they are involved in that, the trade and business. Come occupational groups, in which occupation they are involved. So on that basis also it has been organized by the merchants, by the traders and the businessmen. Urban professional classes. This is now, other than the merchants, this is the professional classes were also there, who they were living in the towns and the cities. First is about the physicians. This is Hakim or Vaid. This is in Hindi or Sanskrit term. This is the Arabic Persian term, or in the Urdu it is Hakim. English it is physician. Teachers in community, in those days Hindus and Muslims were there. For Hindus it is Pandit, for Muslims it is Mullah. Lawyers, only one word is been used, that is Wakil. Painters and the architects and the calligraphers. So this way the profession were categorized during the Mughal period, which has been highlighted by Francois Bernier. Then this is very important thing which was practiced in India and which is considered as very inhuman practice. So what Bernier has provided a detailed description of sati in his account. In his account, in a detailed way, he has written about that, how this inhuman practice was done in the Indian society. He mentioned that while some women seemed to embrace death cheerfully, others were forced to death. Some of the women, they are accepting, some of they resist against that. They don't want to burn themselves alive with the funeral pyre of their husband. He also noticed that the child, that is child satin, which a 12-year-old young widow sacrificed. This is, in those days, the child marriage was very common and practiced in the Indian society. So once he has noticed even that at the age of the 12 years, the girl was not knowing anything. As she was a widow, so she has to sacrifice. And she has been satin. This way, this sati was been practiced, how this inhuman practice was been done, and the people, they used to beat the drum, so the wailing of the widows should not come out from the burning fire. Then coming to discuss about that Manusi. Manusi, he visited India in the 17th century and was in India during practically the whole of reign of Aurangzeb. What it is? Just now till Jahangir we have discussed. Now Shah Jahan. Now this coming to discuss about that during the period of Aurangzeb. So this Manusi, he has visited during the period of Aurangzeb in the 17th century. He recorded his varied experience and observations in his large work, Storia de Mogor. This is the name of the book, his observation he has written in his account with this Storia de Magar, which runs into 4 volumes. How many volumes are there of this Storia de Magar? 4 volumes are there, written by Manussi. Like many other travelers, he takes a very low view of the Indian character, both for Hindus and the Muhammadan. So, what is this? Hindus and for both Hindus and Muhammadan, Manusi is a useful but not a very reliable authority. His account is very useful, but it is not considered as a very reliable. Next is about the Jean-Baptiste Travier. Jean-Baptiste Travier, he may be regarded as the prince of ramblers, as the prince of ramblers. Ramblers means that the person who is wandering or moving from one place to another for their pleasure, enjoyment. So in that way only he visited India for the first time in 1640, and during his succeeding years his travel extended to the portion of India, and his work is important or the commercial history of that period. This is about that. He became a friend of Bernier and traveled to Bengal with Francois Bernier, and the traveler's work is important for the commercial history of that period. Commercial history for the trade and commerce, his records were very important. His description of roads and the highways is full of interest, as also for his occasional remarks on the social life of the people. As he was traveling with the road, so many a times he was considering that, and he has written, explain about that, the social life of the common people, about the society. Travnius writes that the roads were unsafe in certain parts of the country. How it was difficult for him to travel, so he has written about that. It is not very safe. Whosoever wished to travel in India, whether by carriage or palanquin, ought to take with him 20 or 40 armed men with bow, arrow, and muskets. So this was his suggestions given by that. If suppose anyone wants to travel to the road in India, why it is not safe and how to make it safe movement, they must have to carry with them the 20 or 40 armed men with them with the bow, arrow, and musket. Beggary was widely prevalent, and he says that there were in India around 8 lakh Muhammadan fakirs, means that who they live for, their living is, they are earning their living by begging. They were also known as fakir. And there were about 12 lakh Hindu mendicants, the figures which are impossibly to verify. Whatever the figure is given by him, it is not been verified. Because of that, the census was very difficult. The demography of the population was very difficult. So this is about that, the Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, and what he has explained about India. He was, along with the Francois Bernier, traveled to our country. He visited our country. Now, some of the important questions of this part, which we have to just recall what we have learned from here. Who was the ruler of India when Francois Bernier visited India? During whose period he visited India? Answer is Shah Jahan. Who was Francois Bernier? He was actually a, who was Francois Bernier? He was actually a physician from France. This is He was a physician from France. Then Bernier described Mughal cities as camp towns. The next question is about that. Who was Domingo Pace? When did he visit Vijayanagar? Franquis, this Domingo Pace was a Portuguese traveler. He was a Portuguese traveler. When did he visit Vijayanagar? In 1522. He visited the city of Vijayanagar, Kingdom of Vijayanagar. When did English merchant Fitch he visit India? This is Fitch or Ficht, also we can pronounce. He visited India in 1583 during the period of Akbar. At that time, India was ruled by Emperor Akbar. What did he write about Agra and Fatehpur Sikri? He has explained these two, Agra and Fatehpur Sikri, as the great cities. Even he has highlighted about that these cities are more developed and means more prosperous even in comparison to London. Then next question is about that when did Niccolo Manussi visited India? It's a very simple Niccolo Manussi. Then when he has visited India, Niccolo Manussi visited India in 1535. And this is the name, the book written by him. So Niccolo Manussi, he has written the book Story This Niccolo Manussi, he has visited India during the period of Aurangzeb. And the name of the book written by him is the Storio. This is the name of the book written by him. So this is when did Niccolo Manussi visited India? He was visited India during the period of Aurangzeb, and the book written by him is Story de Mughal. So this is all about the chapter, the traveler's account, the three travelers, medieval society. Through the traveler's account, we have completed. Hope so. It is easy to understand to you people.